found out my daughter-in-law had been draining my retirement accounts at 2:17 in the morning from a hospital bed I could not get out of. $226,000 gone. And the hardest part was not the money. The hardest part was that she was coming to hold my hand in 8 hours, and I had to let her. I had to smile at the woman who was robbing me blind while I lay there too sick to stand. But I am getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how a 72-year-old retired school teacher ended up flat on her back in a hospital while her daughter-in-law emptied every account she had. My name is Vivian Matthews. 35 years I taught 4th grade at Houston ISD, 35 years of early mornings and late nights grading papers at my kitchen table and putting money away every single month without fail. I retired with a pension of $3,400 a month, a paid-off house in Fools Here, and 2 accounts I had been building since before my son Deshaun could walk. A teacher retirement system pension and a personal savings at Lone Star Credit Union. Combined balance, $287,000. Every dollar of it earned standing on my feet in a classroom. My husband, James, passed in 2014, heart attack on a Tuesday morning. And after that, I kept the house, kept my finances in a folder in the top drawer of my dresser, and kept my business to myself. James always said your money is your private business. I believed that down to my bones. Then I got sick. Spring of 2021, shortness of breath that would not quit, swelling in my legs that got worse every week. By August, I was in a Houston hospital room with an IV in my arm and a diagnosis that meant I was not going home anytime soon. 4 months, they told me, maybe longer. My body had turned on me the way bodies do when you have spent 72 years asking it to keep going without complaint. And that is where everything fell apart because I could not manage my own bills from that bed. I could not drive to the credit union. I could not sit at my kitchen table with my folder and my calculator and my reading glasses and do what I had done every single month since James died. I could not walk to my own mailbox. I could not even get to the bathroom without pressing a call button and waiting for someone to help me stand. 72 years of independence, and now I had to ask permission to use the restroom. I needed help, and I hated needing it more than I hated being sick. Rebecca offered before I could ask. Now, you need to understand something about Rebecca. She had been my daughter-in-law for 15 years. Married Deshaun when he was 27. She was at every Christmas dinner, every birthday, every hospital visit when James was dying. She called me Mama V starting the 2nd year, and I let her because she said it with warmth. And I believed the warmth was real. 15 years, I believed it. Mama V, I'll handle everything, she said, sitting in the chair by my hospital window with her hand on mine. You don't worry about a single bill. I'll manage the accounts. I'll pay what needs paying, and you just focus on getting better. I hesitated. I had never given anyone access to my accounts. Not Deshaun, not even James, God rest him, had the passwords to my personal savings. But I was sick. I was scared, and Rebecca was family. What kind of person steals from a sick woman lying in a hospital bed? So I gave her the login credentials, both accounts, the TRS pension and the Lone Star Credit Union savings, full authority to make transfers and payments. I signed the paperwork the bank required, and I watched her tuck it into her purse with a smile and a promise. I told myself I was being smart, being practical, handling my business the only way I could from a bed I could not leave. I told myself that trust is what family is for. That was the first mistake. It was also the last choice I made freely for a very long time. Rebecca came to see me every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, like clockwork. She brought food from the jollof rice place on Westheimer that I loved. She talked to my nurses by name. She fluffed my pillows and adjusted my blanket and sat in that chair by the window and told me everything was taken care of. The bills are paid, Mama V. The house is fine. You just rest. She posted about it on Facebook, too. Pictures of herself at my bedside. Captions about how strong I was, how she was praying for my recovery, how family shows up when it matters. People from church commented with hearts and prayer hands. Everyone thought she was a saint. I thought she was a saint. She came 3 times a week for months, held my hand, kissed my forehead, asked the nurses how I was progressing, told Deshaun his mama was doing just fine and that she had everything under control. And every single time she walked out of that room, she went home and moved more of my money into her own accounts. $3,400 a month in pension income, and she was redirecting most of it before I ever saw it land. But I did not know that yet. What I knew was the hospital, the rhythm of it, the nurses rotating shifts at 7 in the morning and 7 at night, the blood pressure cuff at 6 a.m., the physical therapy sessions that hurt but meant I was getting stronger. The ceiling tiles I had counted so many times I could close my eyes and see the water stain above the third light from the door. The IV pole that followed me like a metal shadow every time I stood up to walk 10 steps down the hall and 10 steps back, which was all my body could manage. My whole world had shrunk to the size of that room. The window that looked out onto a parking lot, the whiteboard on the wall where they wrote my nurse's name and the date, like I might forget what day it was. The drawer in the nightstand where I kept my notepad, the one the nurses gave me to write down my symptoms. I used it for that. I also used it to write down the things I was thinking when the room got too quiet and my mind got too loud, which was most nights. I was a woman who had run her own house, her own classroom, her own life for 50 years, and now my biggest accomplishment on any given day was walking 12 steps down a hallway without losing my breath. And then on a Tuesday evening, about 3 months in, my night nurse, Gloria, said something that changed everything. She was checking my vitals the way she did every night. Blood pressure cuff, oxygen clip on my finger, the usual. Gloria was good at her job and easy to talk to. She would chat while she worked, half to me and half to the air, the way night nurses do when the hallway is quiet and the patients are settling in. Your daughter-in-law was asking me about your discharge timeline again yesterday, she said, wrapping the cuff around my arm. 3rd time this month. I looked at her. Is that unusual? Gloria paused. She read the number on the monitor, wrote it down, then looked at me over her glasses. Most family members ask about recovery. She only asks when you're leaving. She moved on, checked the IV drip, wrote something on her clipboard, said goodnight. The door closed behind her and the room went quiet. I lay in the dark and replayed that sentence for an hour, maybe 2. She only asks when you're leaving, not how are you feeling, not what does the doctor say about her progress, not is the medication working. When are you leaving? As if the answer to that question mattered more to Rebecca than whether I lived or died. I did not act on it. Not that night. But those words sat in my chest like a stone I could not swallow and could not spit out. I carried them through Wednesday, through the physical therapy session where I walked 12 steps instead of 10, and the therapist said I was making progress. Through Rebecca's Thursday visit where she brought me sweet potato pie and told me Deshaun sent his love and held my hand for 40 minutes and said the same thing she always said. Everything is taken care of, Mama V. I smiled at her. I thanked her. I watched her walk out and I listened to her heels clicking down the hallway until the sound disappeared. And the whole time, Gloria's words were turning in my head like a key looking for the right lock. She only asked when you're leaving. 2 days I carried that stone. 2 days it sat in my chest getting heavier. Then came the night of the discovery. 2:17 a.m., a Thursday, now turned Friday. The medication was supposed to put me under, but it only ever got me to the edge of sleep and left me there. The hallway outside was dim. I could hear the soft squeak of a nurse's shoes somewhere down the corridor, a monitor beeping 2 rooms over. The particular silence of a hospital in the middle of the night, which is not silence at all, but a collection of small sounds that prove how alone you are. I reached for my phone, not to check the time. I reached for it because Gloria's words had been turning for 2 days and I could not make them stop. She only asked when you're leaving. I needed to understand why. Why would Rebecca care more about when I was discharged than whether I was healing? What was waiting for her on the other side of my recovery that she needed me to stay away from? I opened the banking app. I had not looked at my account since I was admitted. I had trusted Rebecca. I had no reason not to. The number on the screen made no sense. I blinked. I read it again. $11,340. That was not right. That could not be right. My combined balance across both accounts had been $287,000 the last time I checked. I did the math in my head, subtracted 11,340 from 287,000. Did it again. A third time slow because maybe the medication was clouding my numbers. It was not the medication. $275,660 was gone. I put the phone face down on the blanket. I lay completely still. My hands were flat on the hospital sheet, and I could feel my own heartbeat in my fingertips. From the hallway, the squeak of shoes again, a door opening and closing somewhere, the beep. I picked the phone up, checked again. Same number, $11,340. That is what was left. Out of everything, I stared at it the way you stare at something that cannot be true but is. 35 years of teaching, 35 years of standing in a classroom and grading papers at my kitchen table and putting money away every single month without fail. Every field trip I chaperoned, every summer I did not take a vacation because the savings mattered more. Every Christmas I gave modestly so the accounts could grow. All of it reduced to less than 4 months of bills. And now I understood Gloria's words with a clarity that cut through the medication and the fatigue and the dull ache in my chest that I had blamed on the illness. Rebecca was not asking when I was leaving because she missed me at home. She was calculating, how much time do I have left before she comes back and sees what I have done? I thought about what came next. Rebecca visits on Thursdays. She would be here by 10, maybe 10:30. She would bring food. She would sit in her chair. She would hold my hand and say, everything is taken care of. And I would be looking into the face of the person who had taken $275,000 from me while I lay in this bed, too sick to check. If I called her now, if I sent a text, if I said I need to talk to you about the accounts, what happens? She moves whatever's left. She covers her tracks. She prepares a story. And I, sick and bedridden and dependent on her for everything, am in the worst possible position to fight. So I lay there and I thought like the woman I have always been, not a victim, a teacher. I have been a school teacher for 35 years. I know this. If you catch a child cheating and they see that you have caught them, the evidence disappears and the lying starts. You do not react. You do not confront. You watch first, you document, then you move. I reached for the notepad in my nightstand drawer, the one the nurses gave me for symptoms. I turned to a blank page and I started writing numbers. Every amount I remembered, every account balance I could recall, the date, the time, 2:17 a.m., Then I closed the banking app. I put the phone down. I plugged it back in. I folded my hands on top of the blanket and I stared at the ceiling, at that water stain above the third light from the door. And I started planning, quietly, carefully, the way I had planned every lesson for 35 years. Rebecca was coming in 8 hours. I would smile at her. I would hold her hand. I would say, "Thank you, sweetheart," the way I always did. And she would have no idea that the woman in this bed had just opened her eyes for the first time in months. Not to the illness, to her. I waited until physical therapy the next morning, 9:15, the 1 hour I knew Rebecca would not call because she had never once called during PT in 4 months. She assumed I was too busy gripping the walker and counting steps to answer a phone. She was right about the walker. She was wrong about what I was doing with the hour. I called Eunice, Sister Eunice Caldwell, 40 years as Solid Rock Baptist together. Retired branch manager at Chase, 28 years. If anyone on this earth knew how to read a bank statement the way I read a fourth grader's essay, it was Eunice. I told her everything. The 2:17 a.m. discovery, the balance, the math I had done 3 times, the decision not to confront. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, the line was quiet for a long time. "How much, Vivian?" I don't know the full number. I only saw the balance. I need 2 years of statements on both accounts. Every transfer, every withdrawal. And Eunice, do not tell Deshawn, not yet. Vivian, if Deshawn confronts her, she moves what's left and we lose the trail. I need you to move quietly. Can you do that? I've been a bank manager for 30 years. I know how to be quiet. Eunice drove to my house that afternoon. Dorothy Patterson, my neighbor of 22 years, let her in with the spare key she had kept since James was alive. Eunice sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I used to grade papers, and she pulled every statement from the folder in my top dresser drawer. 2 years of records, both accounts. Then she called me back during the evening shift change when the hallway was loud enough that no one would hear me talking low. She read me the numbers, and the numbers were worse than I thought. $226,000. Gone. Transferred out of my teacher retirement system pension account and my Lone Star Credit Union savings over 26 months. Every single transfer was under $10,000. Every one. That is not an accident, Eunice said. Her voice was flat and hard. Every transfer is under $10,000, every single one. That is the federal reporting threshold, Vivian. Banks are required to flag transactions at $10,000 or above. She kept every transfer below that line. She studied this. Someone taught her how to steal clean. $8,700 on March 3rd, $9,400 on March 17th, $7,800 on April 2nd, $6,900 on April 14th, $9,100 on May 1st. I wrote every number on my notepad as Eunice read them. My hand was steady. My chest was not. She's going to keep going, I said, until I come home or until it's gone. Which comes first? I looked at the IV in my arm. Let's make sure the trap is ready before either one. I hung up and I lay in the dark and I did the math one more time. $226,000, 35 years of teaching, every field trip I chaperoned, every summer I did not take, every Christmas I gave modestly so the accounts could grow. She had taken it in amounts just small enough that no computer would notice. Someone had taught her that trick and I did not yet know who. The next morning was Thursday, Rebecca's day. She arrived at 10:23. She was wearing yellow. She brought jollof rice from the restaurant on Westheimer, the one I loved, still warm in the container. She hugged me the way she always did, careful, like I might break. She sat in the chair by the window and she crossed her legs and she smiled at me with her whole face. How are you feeling today, Mama V? Better every day, I said. She reached over and took my hand. Her fingers were warm. I looked at them wrapped around mine and I thought about the transfer requests those same fingers had signed. $8,700, $9,400, $7,800. I could feel my own pulse in my wrist where her thumb rested. You are such a blessing to this family, Rebecca. She squeezed my hand. That's what family is for, Mama V. She talked for 40 minutes. The house was fine. The bills were paid. Deshawn sent his love. The grandchildren were doing well in school. Everything is completely taken care of. She said it the way she always said it, with that warmth in her voice that I had believed for 15 years. I nodded. I smiled. I asked after her mother. I told her the jollof rice smelled wonderful. I held her hand and I did not let go first. After she left, the jollof rice sat untouched on my tray. I picked up my notepad. Thursday. Arrived 10:23, departed 11:05, wore yellow, brought food, said the bills are paid, the house is fine, held my hand for the duration of the visit. She had no idea. She walked out of that room believing the same thing she had believed for 26 months, that I was too sick and too old and too trusting to check. That was the performance of my life, and it was only the first one. I called Eunice again during PT the next day. I need a second phone. Something Rebecca will never see on my call log, and I need Dorothy Patterson's number. Eunice brought the phone that Saturday, tucked inside a Get Well card. A prepaid phone, nothing fancy, charged and ready. I kept it in the nightstand drawer under my notepad. That evening, I called Dorothy from the new number. Dorothy, I need a favor, and I need you to not ask me why yet. Vivian, how long have we been neighbors? 22 years. Then ask. Every time you see Rebecca at my house, write it down. Date, time, how long she stays. Don't approach her. Don't let her know you're watching. And Dorothy, keep your phone close. If she's ever on a call in my driveway, I need you to open your voice recorder and hold it near the window. Don't write it down. Record it. Starting today. Starting right now if she's there. I heard Dorothy move across her kitchen. Heard the blind shift. A pause. She's there now, Vivian. Looks like she's carrying boxes out of your house. My eyes closed. Opened. Boxes. She was not just draining the accounts, she was taking things from my home, things I could not see from this bed, things I would not notice until I came back, if I came back at all. Write it down, I said, and charge your phone. Dorothy did not ask why. She did not need to. 22 years of living next door to someone teaches you when to ask questions and when to just start writing. Deshaun came to see me the following week. Tuesday afternoon. He brought flowers, yellow roses, and he was in good spirits, talking about work, talking about the kids. I watched my son sit in that same chair by the window, and I held his hand the way I had held Rebecca's 3 days before, except this time the warmth was real on both sides. Then he said it. Mama, I meant to ask you. A collections agency called the house about some hospital bill, $12,400. I told Rebecca and she said she'd handle it, but I thought she was already handling your bills. My chest went tight. He was sitting right there. One more sentence, one more question, just one, and he would pull the thread that unraveled everything. I could see it in his face, that flicker of something not quite adding up, the same look his students used to give me when the math on the board didn't match the answer in the book. Oh, you know how insurance companies are, baby. Things get crossed all the time. Rebecca's got it under control. He nodded. The flicker passed. He moved on to talking about the grandkids' soccer game, and I smiled and listened and hated every second of the lie I had just told my own son. After he left, I picked up my notepad. Deshaun asked about the bills. Collections called the house. $12,400 in hospital bills that Rebecca was supposed to pay and did not. He was one sentence away from seeing it. I sent him back to her. That is the hardest thing I have done so far. But those $12,400 in unpaid bills did something I could not have planned. The hospital billing department flagged them. Significant assets at admission, bills now going unpaid. That is a pattern they watch for. Standard protocol. 3 days later, a woman knocked on my door. She introduced herself as Patricia from the hospital's social work department. She said the billing office had asked her to check in on my financial situation. Routine, she said, a standard procedure when there are irregularities. I looked at this woman standing in my doorway. I did not know her, but I had been alone with this secret for weeks, and she was the first person inside this building who could make things move. Close the door, I said, and sit down. I told Patricia everything. I showed her the notepad, every date, every amount, every observation I had written since 2:17 a.m. I walked her through the numbers the way I used to walk my students through a long division problem, step by step, so there was no room for confusion. Patricia did not interrupt. When I finished, she sat very still for a moment. Then she said, "You've been running this from your hospital bed?" "I've been a patient here for 4 months. I'm not a vegetable, I'm just sick." She made 2 calls before she left my room. The second one was to the Fort Bend County Financial Crimes Unit, a detective named Janelle Okafor. Patricia told me Okafor would come at noon on a Wednesday, a day Rebecca never visited. I had a schedule. I had given it to Patricia. Okafor would work around it. But before Patricia left, she asked me something that changed everything again. "Mrs. Matthews, I want to cross-reference your care plan with the family instructions we have on file. Would you consent to that?" "What kind of family instructions?" "Your daughter-in-law has made several requests regarding your treatment. I want to verify them against your wishes." "Do it." Patricia came back 2 days later. She sat down. She did not smile. "Mrs. Matthews, your daughter-in-law told our staff you declined the cardiology consult with Dr. Reeves." Did you? I was never told about a cardiology consult. She also reduced your physical therapy from 5 sessions a week to 3. She told the coordinator you said it was too much. I said no such thing. And your blood thinner prescription went unfilled for 11 days. Rebecca was listed as the family contact responsible for pharmacy coordination. The room went very quiet. I could hear the monitor beeping. I could hear my own breathing. I could hear the particular silence that happens inside your chest when you realize the person you trusted was not just stealing your money, but stealing your health. She's not just taking my money, I said. She's keeping me in this bed. Every week you stay hospitalized is another week. She has unchecked access to your accounts. Mrs. Matthews, this is a separate charge. Interference with medical care of a vulnerable adult. I had thought the worst of it was the $226,000. I was wrong. The worst of it was learning that every day I spent too weak to walk, too tired to think clearly, too sick to check my own accounts was a day she had engineered. The canceled consult, the reduced therapy, the blood thinner sitting unfilled at a pharmacy for 11 days while my blood did whatever unthinned blood does inside a 72-year-old woman's veins. She was not trying to kill me. She was trying to keep me sick long enough to finish. Patricia connected me to Detective Okafor that same week. And that same week, Rebecca came back for her Thursday visit. But this time she was not alone. A woman walked in behind her, mid-50s, well-dressed, carrying a prayer card and a small vase of flowers. Mama V, this is my sister Clarice. She's been wanting to come see you. Dear Clarice Weber. I knew exactly who she was. Eunice had traced the secondary account 2 weeks earlier. $2,800 a month flowing to Clarice for consulting. $38,000 total. Clarice had researched the federal reporting threshold. Clarice had set up the account the money flowed into. Clarice had notarized a fabricated property buyout agreement that Rebecca planned to use if anyone ever asked questions. Clarice was not Rebecca's helper. Clarice was the architect, and she was standing at the foot of my hospital bed holding a prayer card. She sat down. She took my hand. Miss Vivian, I have been praying for you every single night. Rebecca tells me how strong you are. That's so kind, I said. Clarice reached down and adjusted the blanket at my feet, patted it smooth with both hands, the same hands that notarized the fabricated agreement, the same hands that set up the pipeline that drained 35 years of my savings. You just rest and let family take care of everything, Clarice said. That's what we're here for. Thank you, Clarice. That means more than you know. They stayed for an hour. Rebecca and Clarice talked easily, finishing each other's sentences, laughing about their mother's cooking. Two sisters, comfortable, relaxed. They had no idea the woman in the bed was memorizing every word. I smiled when they smiled. I laughed when they laughed. I thanked them both when they left, and I watched them walk down the hallway together, and I listened to their voices fade until there was nothing left but the beep of the monitor and the hum of the air vent and my own hands trembling on top of the blanket. Not from weakness, from rage. I picked up my notepad. Thursday. Clarice visited. She touched my blanket with the same hands that notarized the fake agreement. She told me to let family take care of everything. I smiled at her. I smiled at both of them, the thief and the architect, in the same room at the same time for 1 hour. I am running out of smiles. Then I picked up the second phone and called Eunice. The sister was here, in my room. She sat on my bed and told me to rest and let family handle everything. Eunice, I need this to be over soon. How fast can we move? Detective Okafor came on a Wednesday. Noon, like Patricia arranged. Rebecca never visited on Wednesdays. I had given that schedule to every person working my case. Okafor sat in the chair by the window, the same chair Rebecca sat in, and opened a folder on her lap. Mrs. Matthews, we traced the secondary account, the one receiving the transfers from your daughter-in-law's personal account. Who does it belong to? Clarice Weber, your daughter-in-law's sister. She's been receiving $2,800 a month, $38,000 total. I already knew. Eunice had traced it weeks earlier, but hearing it from a detective with a badge and a case number, made it something else entirely. It made it evidence. She's not just helping Rebecca spend the money, Okafor said. She set up the pipeline. She researched the reporting thresholds. She notarized a fabricated property agreement. Mrs. Matthews, your daughter-in-law is the face. Her sister is the architect. I know, I said. She sat on my bed 2 weeks ago and told me to let family take care of everything. Okafor closed the folder. We're building this as a joint case, both of them. Good. 3 days later, Dorothy called on the second phone. It was evening. The hallway was quiet. Her voice was shaking. Vivian, I got it on tape. She was in your driveway on the phone. She didn't see me at my window. I had my phone out like you told me. She was talking to Clarice. Vivian, I need to play it for you. Play it? Dorothy held her phone to the receiver, and I heard Rebecca's voice, tinny through 2 phones, but clear, every word. That woman sits on a pension in a paid-off house like she's rich. She's not using any of it. She's not even going to make it home, Clarice. By the time anyone figures it out, the house will be in my name, too. Silence. I could hear Dorothy breathing. I could hear the monitor beside my bed. I could hear nothing else because everything inside me had gone perfectly still. Vivian, are you there? I'm here. Are you okay? Save that recording. Do not delete it. Email it to yourself. Email it to me. Email it to Eunice. 3 copies. Today. Vivian. 3 copies, Dorothy. Today. That recording is the case. I hung up. Set the phone on the blanket, looked at the ceiling, the same water stain I had been staring at for 4 months, and let myself hear those words again. She's not even going to make it home. The house will be in my name, too. She was not stealing because she was desperate. She was stealing because she believed I was already gone. She had looked at me in this bed, held my hand, brought me jollof rice, called me Mama V, and the entire time she was waiting for me to die so she could take my house. The woman I called daughter was dead to me, not the sharp death of the 2:17 a.m. discovery, not the slow death of watching the numbers on my notepad grow week after week. Something quieter, something that set like concrete in my chest and would never move again. I did not cry. I was past that. I picked up the notepad and wrote 1 sentence. She said I am not going to make it home. Then I put the notepad in the drawer and folded my hands on the blanket and waited because the next thing was already coming. It came 2 days later. Attorney Hayes called on the second phone. Mrs. Matthews, I need you to hear this calmly. Your daughter-in-law and her sister have drafted an emergency guardianship petition. They're claiming you are mentally incompetent due to your illness. If it's filed and granted, Rebecca gets legal control of your finances, your property, and your medical decisions. The investigation dies. How long before they file? 3 weeks, maybe less. 3 weeks. She was not just stealing my money. She was not just keeping me sick. She was trying to own me, legally, on paper, the same way you own a house or a car. Can you stop it? I'm filing a counter motion tomorrow morning. And Mrs. Matthews, the forensic analysis came back on that property agreement Clarice notarized. The document metadata shows it was created 18 months after the first transfer. There was no agreement. There never was. That is fraud on its face. So their defense is gone. Their defense is destroyed. And with the recording, the transfer history, the sabotage documentation, and the forensic report, he paused. I have handled 60 elder fraud cases. I have never seen a victim build a better case from a hospital room with a notepad. When do we move? 3 days. I'll coordinate with Okafor in the DA's office. 3 days, Mrs. Matthews. I hung up. Outside the window, it was getting dark. Somewhere across town, Rebecca was in her kitchen with her $34,000 granite countertops, and she had no idea that in 3 days, every door in her life was going to close at once. That Sunday, Deshaun and Rebecca came together. He was in good spirits. He kissed my forehead and sat in the chair and started talking about the house. Mama, you should see the kitchen. Rebecca put in new granite countertops. Place looks like a magazine. $34,000, February 12th, my teacher retirement system account. I looked at Rebecca, who was adjusting flowers on my nightstand. smiling. That sounds lovely, baby. You two deserve nice things. Then Deshaun leaned forward. Actually, Mama, when's the last time you looked at your accounts? Rebecca was saying something about a transfer the other day, and I was wondering. Rebecca's hand was on his arm before he finished the sentence. Everything's fine, babe. I've got it handled. Your mama doesn't need to worry about numbers right now. She turned to me. We were just talking about the grandkids' school play. Deshaun, tell your mama about Jalen's solo. I watched my son's face shift. The question left his eyes. He smiled and started talking about his grandson singing, and I sat there holding his hand thinking, twice now. He almost saw it twice. And twice I watched her hand on his arm, steering him away from the truth. In 3 days, he would know everything. In 3 days, the woman he loved would be in handcuffs. And he would ask me why I didn't tell him, and I would have to explain that the love he felt for her was the same thing that kept him from seeing what she was. After they left, I picked up the notepad. Sunday? Deshaun mentioned countertops. Rebecca redirected. He almost saw it again. He is going to be devastated. Then I put the notepad in the drawer with the phone and the 6 weeks of evidence, and I lay back against the pillow. Everything was in place. The recording, the bank records, Dorothy's log, Patricia's documentation, the forensic report, the counter motion, Detective Okafor, Attorney Hayes. 3 days. She came on a Saturday, right on schedule, 2:15 in the afternoon, same as always. I heard her heels in the hallway before she turned the corner. Rebecca set a container of jollof rice on my nightstand, kissed my forehead, pulled the chair close, and took my hand. How are you feeling today, Mama V? Better, I said. Tired, but better. She squeezed my fingers. Her nails were fresh. Her hair was done. And I held her hand and looked at her face and thought, this is the last time. Tomorrow morning, Detective Okafor would be at her front door before she finished her coffee. At the same moment, federal agents would walk into Clarice's office and Katie. Neither one could warn the other. Neither one could run. But right now, it was Saturday. And I was Mama V one last time. You look good, she said. Color's coming back. That's what they tell me. She talked about the grandkids. Jalen had a basketball game. Nadia made honor roll. I smiled. I nodded. I held her hand the whole time because I had been a teacher for 35 years and I knew how to hold a room. At 3:45, she stood up, smoothed the blanket, checked the flowers. I don't know what I would have done without you, I said. She smiled. That smile, the one I used to believe. That's what family is for, Mama V. You go on home and rest. You've done enough. She kissed my forehead one more time, picked up her purse, walked out. I listened to her heels fade down the hallway until the sound was gone. Then I picked up the second phone. Eunice is done. Tell them she just left. She's heading west on Mason Road. They should be ready for tomorrow morning. They're ready, Vivian. It's over. Almost. I hung up, set the phone in the drawer, closed my eyes, not to sleep, to breathe. 5:45 the next morning, I called my son. Deshaun. Mama, it's early. You okay? I'm fine. I'm going to tell you something and I need you to listen to all of it before you speak. Silence on his end. Then, okay. I told him everything. The 2:17 a.m. discovery, the banking app, the math done 3 times, the $226,000, the transfers under $10,000, Dorothy's recording, Patricia, the sabotage, the blood thinner left unfilled for 11 days, the fabricated property agreement, the guardianship petition, 6 weeks of notes in a hospital notepad. I did not stop. If I stopped, he would ask questions I could not answer yet. When I finished, there was nothing on the line. Deshaun? He was crying. Not the loud kind, the kind where a man's breath comes ragged and wet and he cannot make it stop. Why didn't you tell me, Mama? Because you would have gone to her, and if you went to her, the money disappeared and we had nothing. Mama, baby, I need you to hear me. In 15 minutes, investigators are going to arrest Rebecca at your house. At the same time, they're arresting Clarice at her office. Do not call her. Do not warn her. Can you do that for me? He was quiet. I could hear him breathing. Yes, ma'am. I love you, Deshawn. I love you too, Mama. I hung up, folded my hands on the blanket, and waited. Eunice called at 7:12. It's done, both of them. Rebecca at the house, Clarice at her office building. Neither one had time to make a call. The guardianship petition was never filed. By 9 that morning, it was formally dismissed. 4 months later, I walked into Fort Bend County's 240th District Court. October 31st, 2025. Judge Surendran Patel presiding. Prosecutors Tiffany Johnson and Samantha Broyles at the state's table. It was the first time I had been out of that hospital room in 5 months. I walked in with a cane, sat in the front row, looked straight ahead. Rebecca was at the defense table. She did not look at me. Clarice was at a separate table with her own attorney. They had not spoken since the arrest. The architect and the performer separated with no one left to blame but each other. The prosecution called me first. Mrs. Matthews, when did you first discover the financial irregularities? 3 months into my hospitalization, 2:17 in the morning. What prompted you to check your accounts at that hour? My night nurse mentioned something 2 days earlier. She said my daughter-in-law only ever asked when I was leaving, never how I was healing. How often did the defendant visit you in the hospital? Every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. And during those visits, were you aware of what she was doing with your finances? For the first 26 months, no. For the last 6 weeks, yes. 6 weeks? You maintained the appearance of trust for 6 weeks while building this case? Yes. How? I looked at the jury. 12 faces, still waiting. I taught school for 35 years. I know how to keep my face still. The prosecution entered the recording. Dorothy's recording. Exhibit 14. The courtroom went quiet as the audio system hissed to life, and then Rebecca's voice filled the room. That woman sits on a pension in a paid-off house like she's rich. She's not using any of it. She's not even going to make it home, Clarice. By the time anyone figures it out, the house will be in my name, too. Rebecca's face went white. Clarice's hand grabbed the edge of the table. The jury did not move. Nobody moved. The recording ended. The silence held. The prosecution turned to Clarice's attorney. Miss Weber, can you explain why the document metadata shows the property agreement was created 18 months after the first transfer? No answer. Clarice looked at her lawyer. Her lawyer looked at the table. Dr. Reeves was called next. He testified for 11 minutes. The patient was never consulted about these changes. The family contact made these decisions unilaterally. The cardiology consult was canceled. Physical therapy was reduced from 5 sessions to 3 per week. A blood thinner was left unfilled for 11 days. These decisions extended the patient's hospitalization and put her at measurable medical risk. The jury foreman was writing. He had not stopped writing since the recording played. Closing arguments took 40 minutes. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty. All counts. Rebecca Matthews, theft from the elderly, exploitation of the elderly, conspiracy to commit financial elder abuse, interference with medical care of a vulnerable adult, 12 years state prison, 2 years concurrent for the medical interference, $214,000 in full restitution. Clarice Weber, conspiracy to commit financial elder abuse, 5 years federal prison, notary license permanently revoked, $38,000 in restitution, career destroyed. The guardianship petition was formally dismissed from the record. Rebecca stood when the bailiff came. She looked at me then. For the first time since the trial began, her eyes were wet. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. I looked at her. I did not look away. I did not speak. I did not need to. The bailiff put her hands behind her back. The handcuffs clicked. Once, twice. She was led through the side door. It closed behind her. I sat in the front row of that courtroom with my cane across my knees and my hands folded in my lap, the same way I sat in that hospital bed for 5 months, quiet, still, watching. Eunice was behind me. Dorothy was beside her. They did not speak. They did not need to. I took one breath, then another, then I stood up and I walked out of that courtroom on my own 2 feet. Deshaun came to see me the next afternoon. He sat in the chair Rebecca used to sit in, and he did not speak for a long time. His eyes were swollen. His hands were clasped between his knees the way men hold themselves when they are trying not to fall apart in front of their mothers. "I keep going over it," he said. "Every dinner, every time she kissed your forehead and called you Mama V. 15 years, Mama." "I know, baby." I reached over and put my hand on his. His fingers were shaking. My son is a grown man, but right then he looked like a boy who just found out his best friend had lied about him to the whole class. "Nobody sees it when it's done by someone you love," I said. "That's what makes it work." He was quiet. Then something settled behind his eyes, something that had finished breaking and hardened into a decision. "I filed the papers this morning." I nodded. I did not tell him I was sorry because I was not going to lie to my son. Not after everything we had been through because of lies. Jalen and Nadia, they're with me. They don't understand all of it yet, but they will. The divorce was finalized within 60 days. He signed what needed signing, kept his children close, and let the rest of it go. Sometimes the bravest thing a man can do is walk away from a life he thought was real and start building one that actually is. The court ordered combined restitution of $252,000. I wrote the number on the same notepad where I had written everything else, the one that started with a balance check at 2:17 in the morning. The repayment would take years to collect, but the number was on the record, and the law said it was mine. People started showing up after the verdict, not all at once, but steadily, the way water fills a glass. Women from Solid Rock Baptist brought casseroles and prayer cards. Miss Hattie from the deaconess board squeezed my hand and said, "We've been praying for you, Vivian. The whole church has." Dorothy came every morning with her thermos of coffee and a crossword puzzle she never finished. "You need anything today?" she would ask, and I would say, "Just you sitting right there," and she would smile and open the paper. Eunice handled my discharged paperwork, my insurance calls, my prescriptions, every piece of bureaucracy that stands between a sick woman and her own front door. She did it without being asked because that is who Eunice has always been. Rebecca began serving her 12 years at a state facility outside Huntsville. Clarice was terminated from her title company the day of the conviction, her notary commission permanently revoked, her name in the felony registry. I do not say these things to gloat. I say them because they are facts, and facts are what saved me. 3 weeks after the trial, I came home. Eunice drove. Dorothy sat in the back seat with a blanket across her lap in case I needed it, which I did not, but she brought it anyway because that is what Dorothy does. The drive from the hospital to Fools Here took 40 minutes, and I watched every mile of it through the window. The strip malls on Highway 6, the feed store on FM 1093, the live oaks along my street that had dropped their leaves while I was gone and grown them back again. Eunice pulled into my driveway and turned off the engine. Nobody moved for a moment. "You ready?" she asked. "I've been ready for 5 months." I walked up my front steps with my cane in my right hand and my keys in my left. The same door James and I had painted blue the summer we moved in. I turned the lock and pushed it open and stood in my own hallway and breathed in the smell of my own house. They had cleaned everything. The floors were mopped. Fresh towels in the bathroom. My bedroom was made up with clean sheets and the quilt my mother had sewn the year I started teaching. I walked from room to room, touching things. The bookshelf, the framed photo of James on the mantle, the window above the kitchen sink where the morning light comes in and lands on the counter in a long gold stripe. My house, my name on the deed, my pension depositing $3,400 into my account on the first of every month, same as it always had, going right back where it belonged. I sat down at my kitchen table and put my hands flat on the wood and cried. Not the way I cried in the hospital, quiet and controlled so no one would hear. I cried the way you cry when you have been holding your breath so long that when you finally let it go, your whole body shakes with the release. Dorothy put her hand on my back. Eunice set a glass of water in front of me and waited. They did not try to fix it. They just stayed. The week settled into something I'd almost forgotten was possible. Quiet mornings with coffee on my porch, physical therapy 3 times a week until I could walk without the cane. My garden coming back to life as I pulled weeds and turned soil with my own hands. Deshaun came every Sunday with Jalen and Nadia. He would stand at the stove making eggs while I sat at the table, and one morning he looked over his shoulder and said, "What are you going to do now, Mama, with all this free time?" I looked at my garden through the kitchen window. "Whatever I want." He smiled. The first real one I had seen from him in months. Eunice still called every evening at 7. "Just checking on you," she would say. And I would tell her about my day the way I used to tell James. Dorothy still came by with her crossword puzzles. The circle was smaller now, but it was honest. Every person in it had earned their place, and I had earned mine. On a Sunday morning in January, I stood at the pulpit of Solid Rock Baptist Church. Eunice was in the third pew, same seat she had occupied for 40 years. Dorothy beside her. Deshaun in the back row with the children. Pastor Michaels had asked if I wanted to share my testimony, and I had said yes, because there are things that need to be spoken out loud in a room full of people who will carry them forward. I looked out at the congregation, faces I had known for decades, faces that had prayed for me when they did not know the half of what I was going through. "Some of you know my story," I said. "Some of you know pieces of it. I am not here to talk about what was taken from me. I am here to talk about what I kept." The room was still. I kept my mind, I kept my dignity, I kept my house, and I kept every single person in this room who showed up for me when showing up was the only thing that mattered. I gripped the edges of the pulpit the way I used to grip the edges of my hospital bed rail when the nights were long and the ceiling was the only thing to count. A hospital bed is not a white flag. It is not the end of your story. It is just a place where you sit still long enough to figure out what to do next. The sanctuary was quiet. Then Eunice said, "I'm in," and Dorothy said it after her. And then the whole room said it together, and the sound filled the space the way morning light fills a window, warm and steady and unhurried. I stepped down from the pulpit and walked back to my seat. No cane. The sun was coming through the stained glass above the choir loft, laying color across the wooden pews in long, slow bands of gold and blue. I sat down, and I folded my hands in my lap, and I was still. Not the stillness of a woman watching and waiting, the stillness of a woman who is finally home.